Auschwitz-Birkenau is located in southern Poland. It is about a 3.5-hour drive from Warsaw and a 1-hour drive from Krakow. In this aerial view, you can see how geographically massive Birkenau is in comparison to Auschwitz. The distance between Auschwitz I and Auschwitz II Birkenau is about 1.5 miles. It would take about 30 minutes to walk from one camp to the other. Here's a closer view of Birkenau. The borders extend all the way out here and then back around. To give you an idea of how large Birkenau is, it's about the size of 400 football fields. This is a map on display at Birkenau. I have included the aerial map from the previous slide as an inset to give you an idea of scale. We'll start our visit to Birkenau at the main entrance where the trains would enter. We'll make our way down the track about halfway where a lone boxcar sits. The famous entrance to Auschwitz II Birkenau. Beyond this gate, extermination took place on a massive scale. We'll start by making our way to the guard tower above the tracks, which will give us a panoramic view of the enormity of the camp. Looking to our right from the tower, we can see smaller guard towers that line the perimeter. To our left, we can see some of the reconstructed wooden barracks. Beyond the barracks, you can see a field of brick chimneys, which is what remains of the barracks that once stood there. In this view, the camp extends all the way to the tree line in the distance. A close-up of one of the reconstructed wooden barracks. The wooden barracks were designed to hold about 400 people. About 15 people were made to share each of the 3-tiered bunk beds. In this view, you can see the track as it enters the camp. Near the tree line in the distance are where the remains of Crematorium II and Crematorium III are located. The train track extends all the way down. To the right, you can see a split in the track, which in this area is where the unloading platform was. You can see another field of brick chimneys to your left, which is where many of the women's barracks were located. This view is looking to the left from the main guard tower. Once again, you can see other guard towers that line the perimeter. The edge of the camp runs along the tree line. The brick barracks that you see are original, and you are allowed to walk through a few of them. The brick barracks were designed to hold about 700 people. This side of the camp primarily consisted of barracks for women and children. Here is a video from the tower I took to give you a panoramic view of the massive scale of Birkenau.
I think we got a video going on. If I were smart, I'd give her If I were smart, I could do a video too. But I'm not smart. Yeah.
This is a view inside the camp, looking back towards the entrance and the tower we were just in. On the loading platform sits a lone boxcar. From the trains, those selected for immediate extermination in Crematorium IV and Crematorium V, which are located back here, were made to walk down a long path surrounded on either side by electrified fencing. It's hard to get an idea of the scale of how long this path is from the diagram, but I remember it taking a long time to walk from one end to the other, and the thought kept reoccurring to me. The size of this place is incomprehensible. As I walked down this path, there was row after row after row of remains from where barracks once stood, for as far as the eye could see. Our journey starts here. The path is so long you cannot even see where it ends. Imagine arriving to this place, not knowing where you are, being torn from your loved ones, orders being yelled at you in a language other than your own, seeing German shepherds viciously barking at you as they tug at the leash held by Nazis, laughing at the terror in your eyes. As you begin down this path, you have no idea what awaits. We'll take this walk in silence and resume commentary at the other end. We've just walked down this long pathway. Now we'll take this road and go up towards Crematorium 4 and Crematorium 5. We'll walk down this road to the tree line straight ahead, where the remains of Crematorium 4 and Crematorium 5 are located. If the crematoria were full, people were made to wait in this wooded area at the end of the path until it was their turn to enter the gas chamber. This is what remains of Crematorium 5. These are the remains of Crematorium 4. The sign reads, on October 7th, 1944, members of the Sonderkommando, the special detachment of Jewish prisoners who were forced to empty the gas chambers after a mass gassing and undertake the burning of the corpses, organized the only armed revolt that ever took place at Auschwitz. They succeeded in destroying gas chambers and Crematorium 4. More than 450 heroic prisoners who took part in the revolt were murdered by the SS, either during the revolt itself or subsequently for the purpose of retaliation. From Crematoria 4 and 5, we'll make our way to the building where new arrivals were processed, represented by this star. This building, known as the Sauna, is located near Crematoria 4 and 5. New arrivals who were not immediately taken to the gas chamber were taken to this building for processing. In this building, the new arrivals were tattooed with their camp number, their hair was cut, they were disinfected, and they were given their striped uniform. In the room to the left, newly arrived prisoners were made to undress and hand over any personal belongings they still may have. Once undressed, if a female was noticed to be visibly pregnant, she was sent to the gas chamber. The clothing collected was disinfected using steam. The photo to the right is one of the autoclaves used for disinfecting. This cart was found near a pond near Crematorium 4. Carts such as this were used to transport human ashes to ponds and fields around Birkenau. As you exit the building, there's a room that has a collection of family photos of some of the people deported to Auschwitz. In this open area in front of the sauna building, you can see the remains of where warehouses were located. This area was collectively known as Canada. It was here that the clothing and personal belongings were confiscated, stored, and shipped out by the Nazis. Before the larger crematoria were built in Birkenau, 2 smaller bunkers were used and their remains lie on the outskirts of Birkenau. Bunker 1 was known as the Little Red House, and Bunker 2 was known as the Little White House. On this site once stood a Polish home that the Nazis converted into a small gas chamber. The house was made of red brick, which is how it got the nickname the Little Red House. Nazis began gassing prisoners here in March of 1942. Once the larger gas chambers were up and running, the Nazis no longer needed Bunker 1, and it was destroyed. No traces of the bunker remain today. Only the small field where it once stood. Bunker 2 was another Polish home that was converted into a small gas chamber. The building had plastered walls, giving it the nickname the Little White House. The sign next to the site reads, Bunker 2 was also known as the White House. Men, women, and children were murdered here by gas. The majority of the people murdered were Jews, but Polish political prisoners selected by the SS from the infirmary of the concentration camp were also murdered here. Bunker 2 contained 4 temporary gas chambers of different sizes. It was in use from 1942 until the 4 large gas chambers and crematoria elsewhere in Birkenau were brought into operation in the spring and early summer of 1943. It was reopened in 1944 when additional gas chambers were needed for the mass murder of the Jews deported from Hungary. We'll now make our way to the remains of Crematorium 2 and Crematorium 3. These were large T-shaped structures, which I've kind of shown here. People would descend underground into the undressing room. From there, they would be led into the underground gas chamber. The remains were then put on lifts to be raised to the above-ground crematorium to be burned. Between Crematoria 2 and 3 is a monument to the victims of Auschwitz. It is lined with several plaques, each in the language of the country of origin of those deported to Auschwitz. This plaque, written in English, reads, Forever let this place be a cry of despair and a warning to humanity, where the Nazis murdered about 1.5 million men, women, and children, mainly Jews from various countries of Europe. Auschwitz-Birkenau, 1940 to 1945. These are the remains of Crematorium 3. It's kind of hard to see from this angle, but there's a T-shaped. So this part is the underground dressing room. Over here is the underground gas chamber. And then this direction is where the above ground crematorium was located. You can see the rubble is extensive. This is another view of the underground dressing room. Down at this end are stairs that people would descend down to into the undressing area. The train tracks that enter Birkenau end at Crematoria 2 and 3. We'll now make our way back towards the entrance, this time walking through part of the camp that primarily held women and children. You can see over here on this aerial view, we started here and made our way around the camp and are now coming back this direction. This area is part of the women's camp. Again, you can see the chimney stacks, which are the locations of previous barracks. This sign reads, "On this site stood a wooden barrack where in 1944 more than 200 Jewish children between the ages of 2 and 16 were kept as prisoners. These children, the majority of them twins, were used for criminal medical experiments by the SS doctor Joseph Mengele." Some of the brick barracks in the women's camp that remain intact. As mentioned earlier, the brick barracks were designed to hold 700 people. Many Polish children and their mothers were kept in this barrack. Let's step inside. On either side, there are 2 paintings depicting children. On the next slide, we'll take a closer look at these. This is a close-up of the murals depicting children. These pictures show the sleeping quarters. This sign outside Barrack 25 in the women's camp reads, "This barrack, the death barrack, was used for the special isolation of those women prisoners of the concentration camp who were selected by the SS as unfit for further work and to be sent to be murdered in the gas chambers. Here they had to await their deaths without food or water, and often for several days. Many died in the barracks before they were summoned. When the barrack was full, additional prisoners who had been selected for death were kept outside in a locked yard." Sleeping quarters inside Barrack 25. In Birkenau, a beautiful, vibrant sky is interrupted by towering, electrified fences with razor-sharp prongs, where freedom is just beyond reach.